When was the last time someone asked how you were doing and actually waited for the real answer? Not the, "I'm fine," the real one. The one you swallowed back down because it would have been too much, too heavy, too inconvenient for the room. You probably can't remember, because for as long as you can recall, you've been the one doing the asking, the one sensing when something is off before anyone speaks, the one who walks into a room and immediately feels the weight of what's unspoken, the tension between two people who haven't argued yet, the sadness someone is hiding behind a laugh, the exhaustion in a voice that keeps saying it's okay. You feel all of it, instantly, without choosing to. And somewhere along the way, you decided that was your job, to feel it, to fix it, to stay. But here is something almost no one will tell you. Carl Jung once said, "The most dangerous thing you can do is to repress what you feel." And for most empaths, the feelings being repressed are not other people's. They are their own. You have been so busy feeling the entire room that you forgot to feel yourself. This is not a video about how to protect your energy or how to set better limits. Those are real, but they are not the beginning of the story. This is about what lives underneath. The wound that taught you to feel everyone else first. The shadow you've never looked at. The moment you finally stop running from the one person you've been avoiding the longest. Yourself. Stay until the end. Because the final insight may be the one thing no one has ever told you about yourself. 1. The mask you don't know you're wearing. There's a version of you that wakes up every morning, and before a single thought about yourself forms, your mind is already moving towards someone else. Is she okay after last night? Did he get home safe? Did I say something wrong that made them pull away? You don't notice yourself doing it. It feels natural. It feels like love. But Carl Jung had a name for what you're actually doing. He called it living from the persona. Jung wrote that the persona is a kind of mask, designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other to conceal the true nature of the individual. The persona is not evil. Every person has one. It's the role you learn to play to survive in the world around you. The responsible one, the calm one, the one who holds things together, the one who always knows what to say when someone is falling apart. For most empaths, the persona was built very early, and it was built very thick. And the terrifying thing about a mask worn long enough is that you forget there's a face underneath. I once heard the story of a woman named Elena, 34 years old. She came to therapy not because her life had collapsed, but because it hadn't. Everything was intact. Her career, her friendships, her reputation as the person everyone called when things got hard. But when she sat in that quiet room, the therapist asked her a simple question. What do you enjoy? Not what do you do for others? What do you enjoy just for yourself? Elena opened her mouth, and nothing came out. Not because she was shy, not because the question was unclear, but because in 34 years of being fluent in everyone else's needs, she had never learned the language of her own. She sat there for a long time, and then she said, very quietly, "I don't know." That moment is not rare. It is more common than we admit. Because here's the truth about living behind a thick persona. You don't just perform for the world, you start to perform for yourself. You start to believe that the version of you who gives endlessly, who absorbs quietly, who never asks for too much, is the real you. And the real you the one with desires and limits and feelings that have nothing to do with anyone else's crisis, gets smaller and quieter every year. Jung warned that when the persona becomes too rigid, the soul begins sending signals, not loud ones, quiet ones. A fatigue you cannot explain. A hollow feeling in the middle of moments that should feel full. A vague sense that you are living a life slightly off from the one you were meant to live. You've felt that, haven't you? That subtle wrongness, not grief, not crisis, just a quiet, persistent sense that something essential is missing, and you can't quite name what it is. That's not dysfunction. That's your soul refusing to disappear entirely. Think of an actor who has played the same role for 20 years. At some point, they stop acting. They simply become the character. They no longer know how to be anyone else because they haven't practiced being themselves in so long. That is what happens to an empath who has spent decades in the role of the healer, the listener, the one who holds the room together. The role becomes the identity, and the identity hides the person. The first step in this journey is not about changing anything. It's not about suddenly putting yourself first, or cutting people off, or transforming overnight. It's something much simpler and much more frightening than any of that. It's just the moment you start asking the question Elena couldn't answer. Not, what does everyone else need from me right now? But what do I actually feel right now? That question, asked honestly, is the first crack in a mask that has been on for far too long. And beneath every crack, something real is waiting. If you've ever felt exhausted by being the strong one but couldn't explain why, leave one word in the comments below, seen, just that. Because sometimes being witnessed, even by a stranger, is the beginning of coming back to yourself. 2. Why you feel what others are hiding. Let me ask you something. Do you remember the first time you realized you could sense things other people couldn't? Not in a mystical way, in a very specific, very human way. The way you could tell your mother was upset before she said a word. The way you knew a conversation was about to go wrong 3 sentences before it did. The way a room could feel completely different to you than it seemed to feel to everyone else around you. You probably thought it meant you were more compassionate, more evolved, more in tune, and maybe you are, but Carl Jung would ask a different question. He wrote, "Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parents." What if your sensitivity was not a gift you were born with? What if it was a skill you developed because you had to? Think about what it means to grow up in an environment where the emotional atmosphere is unpredictable. A parent whose moods shift without warning. A home where tension is constant but never spoken about. A childhood where you learned very quickly that paying close attention to how the adults around you felt was the difference between a calm evening and a frightening one. In those environments, children learn to read emotional signals the way other children learn to read words, fluently, automatically, before they can even explain what they're doing. They notice the heaviness in a footstep, the particular silence before anger, the forced brightness in a voice that's hiding something. They become extraordinary readers of subtle emotional data because their safety depended on it. And then they grow up, and they carry that radar into every room they ever enter. There's a man named Marcus. He grew up with a father who drank. Not dramatically, not violently most of the time, but unpredictably. Some nights his father came home gentle and funny. Other nights, he came home with a darkness that changed the air in the whole house. Marcus learned to read his father's footsteps on the stairs before he reached the door. The weight of each step told him what kind of night it would be. He became so skilled at this that he could feel the shift in the house before he heard anything at all. 30 years later, Marcus sat in a meeting at work and couldn't concentrate because he was too busy scanning the faces around the table. He couldn't stop noticing who looked tense, who seemed annoyed, who was hiding something behind their professional smile. He called it being perceptive. His therapist called it something else, a nervous system that never learned how to turn off the alarm. A body still standing guard in a war that ended decades ago. This is the truth that so few people say clearly. For many empaths, sensitivity is not a superpower. It is a survival response that never received the signal that survival was no longer the goal. The radar was built for danger, and the radar still runs, even in safety, even in love, even in moments that have nothing to do with danger at all. And here's the painful consequence of that. When your sensitivity was born from vigilance, from the need to protect yourself by understanding everyone around you, it develops entirely outward. You become extraordinarily attuned to others and completely untrained in yourself. You can read a room with stunning accuracy and not know what you yourself are feeling in that same moment. You can sense someone else's sadness through a text message and miss your own exhaustion entirely. You can hold someone's pain with such steadiness that you forget to notice your own is spilling over. That is not empathy in its fullest form. That is empathy as a wound that learned a very beautiful disguise. Think of it this way. Imagine a radar system installed during wartime, extraordinarily precise, highly sensitive, built for the specific condition of threat. That radar is remarkable in its environment. But even when peace comes, the radar doesn't automatically shut down. Someone has to consciously choose to power it off. Someone has to teach it that the war is over. Your nervous system works the same way, and the beginning of that recalibration is not about becoming less sensitive. It is about understanding where the sensitivity came from in the first place. Because only when you see the wound clearly can you start deciding what to do with the gift it accidentally created. 3. The part of yourself you refuse to look at. Here is a question that might sit uncomfortably. When was the last time you were truly angry? Not disappointed, not hurt, not understanding and forgiving before the pain even fully landed. Truly, honestly, cleanly angry. Take your time with that, because for most empaths, the answer is complicated. Empaths are known for their capacity to forgive, to understand, to give people the benefit of the doubt, even when the doubt has long run out. And there is something genuinely beautiful in that. But Carl Jung would ask you to look at the thing underneath that forgiveness. He said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." For empaths, the darkness is rarely cruelty. It is rarely selfishness in any obvious form. The shadow of an empath is something far more subtle. It is anger that was buried so long ago, it no longer feels like anger. It is resentment that learned to call itself understanding. It is exhaustion that became a personality trait, because feeling tired was more acceptable than feeling furious. It is the part of you that has been giving and giving and giving, and somewhere deep inside, in a room you rarely open, is a version of you that is absolutely done. That knows it has been taken advantage of. That has been waiting, for years sometimes, for someone to notice without being asked. That is your shadow, not your darkness in some dramatic sense. Just the parts of you that never got to exist because the role you were playing left no room for them. There is a woman named Nadia. She was known by everyone in her life as the most understanding person they had ever met. Someone would hurt her, and within hours, she would already be explaining their behavior back to herself in the most compassionate terms. Already finding the reasons, already letting it go. Her therapist once asked her, after listening to her explain away yet another person's hurtful actions, "Have you ever just been angry? No explanation, no understanding, just angry." Nadia went quiet. The silence stretched for a long time, and then her eyes filled with tears. Not because the question was painful, but because she realized she didn't have an answer. She had spent so long being the one who understands that she had completely lost access to the part of her that doesn't. The part that gets to say that was not okay without immediately following it with, "But I understand why you did it." She hadn't been forgiving people. She had been abandoning herself over and over again and calling it grace. Jung believed that what we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves doesn't disappear. It goes underground, and from underground, it runs things. The empath's buried anger doesn't vanish because they don't express it. It shapes every decision they make without their awareness. It shows up as chronic fatigue, as the vague sense that relationships always feel slightly unequal, as the way they attract people who seem to need endless amounts of their energy, as the quiet bitterness that surfaces sometimes, late at night, when no one is watching and no role needs to be performed. There's another layer to the shadow that almost no one talks about, a quiet kind of superiority. The unspoken sense that being sensitive, being the one who feels more, being the one who gives more, makes you better than the people who don't. It is soft and rarely conscious, but it is there. And beneath that is the most honest shadow of all. The way the empath's constant giving is sometimes a form of control. If I am always the one giving, I am never the one receiving. And if I am never the one receiving, I am never the one who could be abandoned. Giving becomes armor. Compassion becomes a strategy for staying safe, not maliciously, not intentionally. But if you sit with it honestly, you will recognize it. Think of it this way. Imagine a house with beautiful open rooms that anyone can enter. Warm, welcoming, full of light. But behind certain doors that are always kept locked are other rooms. A room full of exhaustion that was never allowed to rest. A room holding a grief that was set aside to take care of someone else's grief. A room with a voice that has been waiting for years to simply say, "I am tired, and I am angry, and I needed someone too." Those locked rooms are not weakness. They are the most honest parts of you. Jung didn't ask us to become our shadow. He asked us to stop pretending it doesn't exist. Because here is what happens when you finally open those doors. The anger doesn't destroy you. The exhaustion doesn't swallow you. What happens is something much quieter. You stop being run by them from underneath. You get to choose, not as a performance of emotional maturity, but as a genuine act of freedom. When was the last time you let yourself be angry without apologizing for it, without explaining it away, without immediately turning it into understanding? Sit with that question, not to answer it out loud, just to let it be asked. 4. Why you keep finding the same person to save. Have you noticed a pattern? Not in a vague, self-help way, in a very specific way. The people who enter your closest circle, the ones you invest in most deeply, the ones who occupy your thoughts and your energy and your middle-of-the-night worry, they tend to share something. They are hurting. They are struggling. They are in the middle of something hard. They are the person the rest of the world has given up on, or doesn't fully understand, or has run out of patience for. And you stay. You might have told yourself this is just who you are, that you love deeply, that you see people others miss. And that may be true, but Carl Jung would ask you to look a little closer at the pattern. He wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And here is the extension of that idea that goes even deeper. It is not only what irritates us that reveals us. It is also what we are inexplicably drawn toward, what we cannot seem to stay away from, what we call destiny when it might actually be repetition. Projection is the unconscious process of seeing something outside of yourself that actually lives inside of you. And for empaths, projection operates in a very particular way. When you have an inner wound that has never fully been met, a part of you that needed care and didn't receive it, or received it inconsistently, or learned that love always came with a cost, your unconscious mind will keep creating situations that resemble that original wound, not to punish you, to try again, to try to finally get it right. So the empath who was never fully seen as a child, who had to earn love through being useful or quiet or strong, will unconsciously find themselves in relationship after relationship with people who need to be seen. And they will pour into those people the love they themselves never received. They are not helping the other person. They are trying to heal the child inside themselves by proxy. This is why the pattern never breaks just by choosing differently on the surface. Because the choosing is not happening at the surface. It is happening in a place far below conscious decision. In the part of the psyche that remembers the original equation, that love means giving everything, that closeness requires being needed, that your presence is only safe when it is useful. There is a woman named Lynn. She was kind, perceptive, generous, and she was surrounded by people in crisis. Her partner was recovering from addiction. Her closest friend had severe depression. At work, the colleague she poured the most energy into was always the one struggling the most. Lynn thought of herself as someone who saw potential, who believed in people who had been given up on. And then her therapist asked her something that changed things. Is there anyone in your close circle who is simply doing well? Not recovering, not in the middle of something, not someone you are helping through difficulty, just someone who is stable and at peace? Lynn thought for a long moment, and she couldn't find one. Then the therapist asked the second question. When someone you love becomes stable, becomes okay, stops needing you, what do you feel? Lynn was quiet for a long time, and then, almost in a whisper, she said, I feel unnecessary, like there's no reason for me to be there anymore. That was the wound speaking. Not her kindness, not her capacity for love. The wound, the old belief that her presence was only warranted if it was useful, that she was only worth keeping if she was needed. In ancient Greek mythology, there is the figure of Chiron, a centaur, the greatest healer of his age. He taught the heroes. He tended the wounded. He was renowned for his wisdom in healing others. And yet, Chiron himself carried a wound that would never heal. An arrow wound on his own leg, inflicted by accident, that caused him constant pain. And because he was immortal, he could not die. He could not escape the pain. He could only keep healing others while carrying his own suffering indefinitely. Jung used this image to describe what he called the wounded healer, the one who helps from a place of unresolved personal pain, whose gift is genuine, but whose motivation is tangled with their own unmet need. The path forward for Chiron was not to stop healing. The path was to finally allow himself to receive what he had been giving everyone else. This is the question projection asks of you, not to stop loving people who are struggling, but to look honestly at why you need them to be struggling in the first place. Because the love you keep giving outward is often the love that was never allowed to land on the one person who needed it most. You. 5. The most dangerous moment. When you finally stop, picture a quiet evening. Your phone is in your hand. Someone you care about is going through something difficult, again, and you feel the familiar pull, the one that has been guiding your movements for years. Call, ask, check in, make sure they're okay. But this time, something in you pauses. You put the phone down, and instead of relief, you feel something unexpected. Anxiety, a strange hollowness, a low hum of wrongness, as if you've just neglected something important. That feeling is not your conscience. That is your identity sending an alarm, because you have just stepped outside the only role you've known how to play. And the psyche, which is built on patterns, which knows exactly who you have been for decades, does not know what to do with this version of you that just sat down and stayed with herself. Carl Jung called this the night sea journey. It is an ancient image. The hero goes out to sea and the light disappears. There is no shore visible. There is no compass pointing toward safety. Everything familiar is gone. And in most versions of the myth, something terrifying waits in the deep water. Jung used this image to describe the unavoidable passage every person must take when they begin the real journey toward themselves. Not the polished, performing self. The actual one. The one that exists underneath every role and every habit and every way of being that was built in response to other people's needs. And the terrifying thing he understood is this: that passage is not pleasant. It does not feel like growth at first. It feels like loss, because it is loss. It is the loss of certainty about who you are. He wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And for an empath, complete self-acceptance requires sitting with the questions that the role of constant caretaker was perfectly designed to drown out. Who am I when no one needs me? Am I worthy of love when I am not being useful to anyone? If I stopped giving, would anyone stay? These are not small questions. They are the ones you have been keeping at bay through busyness, through devotion, through always having someone else's crisis to attend to. Because as long as someone else's emergency is louder than your own quiet inner life, you don't have to sit in the silence and hear what is actually there. There is a woman named Sarah. For most of her adult life, she was the emotional center of her family, the one who managed her mother's anxiety and her brother's chaos and her friends' unraveling relationships. She was competent and present and always available, and she genuinely cared. That part was real. But one year, she did something she had been postponing for a long time. She rented a small cabin alone for 3 days. No phone signal worth relying on. No one who needed anything. Just Sarah and 3 days of silence. The first night, she couldn't sleep. It wasn't the unfamiliarity of the bed. It was the silence itself. There was no one to check on. No one had texted asking for help. No crisis was waiting to be solved. She lay in the dark and felt, for the first time in what felt like years, completely unnecessary. And it terrified her. In the middle of the second night, she started crying. Not from sadness exactly. She couldn't explain what it was. Just a release of something that had been held so long, it had stopped having a name. And then, slowly, by the third day, something shifted. She sat on the porch in the morning with coffee and noticed that she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Present. Just present, not needed, not performing, not giving or anticipating or managing. Just there, alive, with herself. She said later that it was the most frightening and the most necessary thing she had ever done. That is the night sea journey, not the moment of peace at the end. But the terrifying darkness in the middle, when you don't know who you are without the role, and you have to keep going anyway. Jung understood that this passage cannot be bypassed. You cannot arrive at yourself without going through the disorientation of not knowing who that self is anymore. Every identity built entirely around others will eventually reach a crisis when those others are no longer present, or when you finally stop giving more than you have to give. And in that crisis, if you stay, if you resist the urge to immediately fill the space with someone else's need, you will find something waiting in the quiet. Not emptiness, not abandonment, yourself. A seed buried in the dark soil doesn't know what it is yet. It cannot see light. It has no evidence that anything is waiting above it. It has only the pressure of the earth and the cold and the dark. And that is precisely where the roots form, deeper than anything visible from the surface. If you've ever felt more lost when you stopped giving than when you were completely exhausted from giving, you know exactly what this moment feels like. Write "I know" in the comments if that has been your experience. You are not alone in that darkness, and it is not the end. 6. Loyal to everyone, faithful to no one. Here's a hard thing to say directly. There is a version of loyalty that has nothing to do with love. It looks like love. It feels, from the inside, like devotion and steadiness and depth of care. But underneath, it is something else. It is the inability to leave. Not because you've chosen to stay, but because leaving has come to feel like a form of violence against them and against the identity you've built around being the one who stays. Carl Jung wrote, "The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. Some relationships are not broken. Some relationships are simply ones you have outgrown." And the empath's great tragedy is that they have often been taught that outgrowing something is the same as abandoning it, so they stay, long after they have grown too large for the space, long after the relationship no longer reflects who they are or who they are becoming. They stay because leaving feels like a betrayal of the person they love, and because they have never been shown how to be loyal to themselves at the same time. But here is what that staying actually costs. There is a woman named May. She had a best friend she loved deeply, a woman who was going through a slow, painful unraveling of her marriage. And May showed up every night for nearly 2 years. Phone calls that lasted hours, long evenings sitting together in the grief of it. She did this because she loved her friend. That part was entirely true. But one evening, May looked at her phone and realized she hadn't answered her mother's calls in 2 weeks. She hadn't finished a single book she had started in months. She hadn't had a conversation about her own life in so long, she couldn't quite remember what she would even say. And when she noticed this, the first thing she felt was not resentment, not anger, it was guilt. A sharp, immediate guilt for even noticing. That guilt is important. That guilt is the signal that something is deeply out of balance. Not because caring for her friend was wrong, but because the guilt appeared at the moment of noticing her own absence. It meant she had accepted her own disappearance as the natural order of things. Her presence in her own life had become the thing that required justification. Her friends' needs had become the baseline. Her own had become the exception. This is what happens when loyalty has no self in it. The empath pours so steadily, so consistently, so completely into others that their own life becomes a kind of ghost, still technically there, still moving, but barely inhabiting itself. Jung had another concept that sits quietly at the center of this pattern. He spoke of the unlived life, the dreams, desires, and inner callings that go unanswered because they were always put aside for something more urgent. And he believed that the unlived life does not simply disappear. It accumulates. It becomes a low, chronic ache. A sense of having missed something you cannot quite name. The empath's unlived life is often quite specific. It is the book they never wrote because they were always helping someone else. The rest they never took because someone always needed them to keep going. The relationship they didn't fully enter because they were still managing the emotional aftermath of the last one. The version of themselves they kept postponing until things settled down, not realizing that for someone with no limits, things never settle down. There is a paradox here that is worth sitting with. You cannot truly be present for someone else when you are disappearing from yourself. The presence you offer when you are running on empty is not real presence. It is performance. It is the last drops of something poured out with a smile while the vessel breaks quietly from the inside. Real loyalty to others begins with a foundation of faithfulness to yourself. And faithfulness to yourself does not mean caring less. It does not mean becoming unavailable or cold or closed. It means that when you offer your presence, there is actually someone home inside it. 3 things an empath needs to understand about real faithfulness. Faithfulness to your energy means recognizing when you are giving from fullness versus giving from depletion, and being honest about which one is happening. Faithfulness to your truth means being willing to name what is actually happening inside you, even when the naming is uncomfortable, even when someone else's discomfort is louder. Faithfulness to your becoming means understanding that who you are is still growing, and that some relationships and roles require you to stay small in order to function, and that choosing to grow is not the same as choosing to hurt someone. Loyalty is not measured by how much you endure. It is measured by how honest you are with others and with yourself. 7. The moment you choose peace, not distance, peace. There is a kind of peace that looks from the outside like withdrawal. The empath who starts saying no more often, who answers the phone less readily, who stops being the first one to reach out after every silence, who creates for the first time small, deliberate spaces in her life where no one else's need is present. To the people around her, this can look like pulling away, like coldness, like something being lost. But from the inside, something entirely different is happening. For the first time, she is arriving. Carl Jung spent much of his life trying to describe what it felt like to complete the journey he called individuation. The process of becoming, in the fullest possible sense, yourself. Not the self that was built in response to others. Not the self that survived by making itself useful or invisible or easy to be around. The actual self. The one that exists underneath every performance and every wound and every role ever learned. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And for the empath, becoming who you truly are does not mean becoming less. It means becoming whole. Because here is what the self-help version of this journey almost always gets wrong. It tells empaths to give less, to feel less, to protect themselves from their own sensitivity, as if sensitivity is the problem, as if the answer is to dull the very thing that makes them who they are. Jung would not say that. Jung would say something far more challenging and far more beautiful. He would say, turn all of that sensitivity inward, all of it. The same exquisite attunement you have given to everyone else's inner life, direct it toward your own. Feel yourself the way you have always felt others. Listen to yourself the way you have always listened to the people you love. Not instead of caring for others, in addition to it. From the same place, with the same quality of attention, because the empath who has done the inner work, who has met their shadow and understood their projection and survived the night sea journey and learned to be faithful to themselves, does not become less caring. They become a completely different quality of presence. They are still sensitive. But the sensitivity is no longer a wound responding to the environment. It is a grounded, integrated capacity. They can feel the room without being taken over by it. They can hold space for someone's pain without absorbing it into their own body. They can offer love from a place that is full rather than a place that is frantically giving away its last reserves. Think of a lighthouse, not a rescue boat, not a swimmer throwing herself into dangerous waters to pull others to shore. A lighthouse, fixed, grounded, shining not because it is straining, not because it is sacrificing, but simply because that is what it is. And because it is stable, because its light is consistent, because it does not move no matter what the weather does, ships in the dark can actually navigate by it. An empath who has not done this work is the swimmer, throwing herself into every storm because she can feel how cold the water is, saving others at the cost of drowning herself. An empath who has done this work is the lighthouse. Her care is no less real. It is more real because it comes from something solid. Do you remember Elena? The woman from the beginning of this journey who sat in therapy and couldn't answer the question of what she enjoyed. 2 years later, she could answer it. Not because she had become less attuned to people, but because she had finally turned some of that attunement toward herself. She was still the person people called when things were hard. She was still present, still warm, still deeply feeling. But something had changed. When she walked into a room now, yes, she still sensed the emotional atmosphere. She still registered what was unspoken and felt the weight of what people were carrying. But in the middle of all of that, she could also feel herself, her own steadiness, her own limits, her own quiet sense of what she had to give that day and what she did not. She didn't give less, she just gave true. And the remarkable thing she reported was this: the relationships in her life didn't shrink, they deepened, because the people around her were no longer relating to a performance. They were relating to a person, and there is nothing more magnetic, nothing more trustworthy, nothing more genuinely healing than a person who is actually fully present in themselves. That is what choosing peace means for the empath. Not choosing peace over people. Choosing peace so that what you offer people is real. Not the last drops of someone who has given everything away, but the steady, clear light of someone who has finally come home to themselves. And from that place, everything is different. Not because the world changed, because you are no longer meeting it at half capacity, behind a mask, running on the reserves of a wound that never got to heal. You are meeting it as yourself, whole, present, finally here. Look at how far this journey has taken you. From the mask so thick you forgot your own face, to the wound beneath the sensitivity that no one named, to the shadow you've been keeping in locked rooms, to the pattern of seeking out what you never learned to give yourself, to the terrifying night of not knowing who you are without a role, to the loyalty that forgot to include you, to this moment. The empath who chooses peace is not the empath who stops caring. She is the one who has finally learned to include herself in the circle of her own compassion. After years of standing just outside it, watching others receive what she poured out without end, she steps in, not with fanfare, not with a dramatic transformation, with something quieter, a decision to stay, not for someone else this time, for herself. She doesn't become the lighthouse overnight, but she stops throwing herself into the water. She finds the ground beneath her feet, and slowly, steadily, her light begins to hold. You did not find this video by accident. Something in you was ready to hear this, ready to stop running from the question that has been waiting patiently at the center of your life. Before you leave, sit with this for just a moment. If you could give yourself the same quality of care you have given everyone else, what would be the very first thing you would do? You don't have to answer out loud. Just let yourself feel it. If this touched something real in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because this journey is only beginning.